Incoming transmission.
Hello everyone, welcome to my brand new series, Incoming Transmission. I'm Admiral Archer from Trek BBS. I would like to personally thank everyone for tuning in tonight. I'm really excited about this new series that I'm going to be doing. Incoming Transmission is my thoughts and feelings about the Star Trek franchise and the different series and movies and books and all the different things, toys, replicas, all sorts of cool stuff. So sit back and relax. Our first episode is going to be about my personal experience with Star Trek and how it changed my life. So let's get started. Star Trek has always been a part of my life. I remember seeing baby videos of my first bath, and in the background you could hear the audio of Counselor Troy and Captain Picard talking on a Star Trek episode. I believe it was Next Generation Season 2. I could be mistaken. It was 89 was the year. And I remember the very first episode I saw on my own. I just turned the channel over to it. And I remember always thinking in the intro of Star Trek The Next Generation, the ship was so cool. I was like, that's a really cool looking spaceship. But I didn't know anything else about it. I was just like, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm like, but I got kind of bored with watching just the people. And I was like, I don't care about the people. Show me more of the ship. So the first episode that I actually remember watching, I was 4 years old, and it must have been a rerun because I was still fairly young when this episode originally aired, but it was The Best of Both Worlds Part 1, and there was a scene where Captain Picard is talking to the Borg on the view screen, and the Borg are saying, surrender yourselves or we will destroy your ship. And Picard, I expected him as a 4-year-old, you have to remember I'm 4 years old at this time, I was expecting him to say something like, oh gosh, now what do I do? And then go hide behind his captain's chair or like wet himself or something. I don't know. I didn't know what he was going to do. This man not only stands up for himself, he stands up for his ship. He risks himself and his ship. He starts yelling. And it's interesting because he's angry. He's not scared. And he says, you have violated the United Federation of Planets. And I'm like, this guy's got balls. I got to find out more about this guy. This guy's awesome. I love this guy. So I was like, he was a hero to me back. That was when it started. And I started watching the episodes with my dad, and then it got canceled. Or not really canceled, but it went off the air. Next Generation went off the air. And I was like, well, that sucks. I just started watching. Because, I was 4 years old in 1993, and 1994 was when the show went off the air. And I was like, that sucks. So I knew a movie was coming up, and I was like, well, this is exciting. It's the Star Trek movie. And I went and we watched it. We didn't watch it at the theater. We watched it on VHS. And I remember how exciting everything was, especially at the very beginning when the Elorian ships are being destroyed in the energy ribbon in the movie Star Trek Generations, which is the one that was called. And I remember thinking, oh, God, I hope everyone got out alive. Because, as a 5-year-old, it's pretty intense. And I was like, Mom, Dad, are they okay? And they're like, shh, don't worry, they beamed him out of there. And I was like, well, who's this other guy? They keep calling him Captain of the Enterprise. I don't know who he is. William Shatner was who it was. And I was like, wait, Rescue 911 dude was the Captain of the Enterprise at one point? And I'm like, I had grown up watching William Shatner on Rescue 911. It was a show about ambulances and, medical emergencies and stuff. And he hosted it in the early 90s. But I didn't know he was another Captain of the Enterprise. I didn't know there was another Enterprise. I thought this was the Starship Enterprise in Next Generation. So I'm getting confused with all this as a 5-year-old. I'm like, so there's another Enterprise. They just crashed the saucer, spoiler alert, of the Enterprise that I thought was the only Enterprise on this planet's surface. It's considered destroyed. They're going to rebuild it, or they're going to build another one. And I thought that the ship, which came to be known as the Nebula class, but it was a starship that rescues the survivors from the Enterprise, and they go off into warp at the end of Generations. And I was like, is that the Enterprise? I guess the Next Generation was the D, so I guess this is the Enterprise E. And then the First Contact comes out, and I was like, so Dad went and saw it at the theater, and he was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. I was like, what did the Enterprise E look like? Was it the Nebula class? And he says, no, it wasn't. But it's hard to explain. You just have to see it. And I didn't really like the Enterprise E as much, but that's another video. And then simultaneously, I saw the scene from The Search for Spock where it was in a retrospective, like an original series documentary, and they showed the scene where the Enterprise blows up. And at first I thought it was just like, well, the saucer's taking some damage, but it doesn't look like it's irreparable. So I figured that was the last episode of the original series. And I remember I had Micro Machines at a young age of the original Enterprise. And I thought, well, the proportions are kind of wrong, but I guess it's just a toy, so who knows? I didn't think it would. Again, I didn't know there was another Enterprise and I didn't know about Captain Kirk or Spock or any of it until I was around 6 or 7. And I was watching this documentary with my dad, and I thought to myself, well, this is cool. So there's another Kirk. There's a 60s version of Star Trek. 7-year-old me is like, everything in those days had a cool 60s version of it, like Lost in Space or, stuff like that. Batman was a big one. That's another story. Everything had a cool retro 60s version that I was getting into. And I remember every 4:30 on NBC, every 4:30 afternoon after I got home from school, I would come home and I would watch the original Star Trek. And my dad even got a chance to order a subscription of the VHS tapes of Star Trek The Next Generation. And I was trekking out. So I want to say it started in earnest when I was 7, but I was also really big into Star Wars. I know, heresy. But I was really interested in both. And I was like, I can't pick a favorite. And Insurrection, the Star Trek movie, came out. And I remember thinking it was boring. I went back and watched a lot of the old ones. I thought the motion picture I thought was boring initially. We'll get to that here in a minute. And I thought a lot of these were just kind of boring. But I like Wrath of Khan. And I remember thinking, but they don't use the Next Generation. What I came to know is the Next Generation theme. They didn't even use the original series theme. They had a different Star Trek theme. And I'm like, does every movie have its own theme song? I'm like, the first movie had the Next Generation theme song. And I remember that being really cool for me. I was like, wait a minute. The Next Generation theme is not from the Next Generation. It's from the motion picture. And more on that here in a few minutes. Insurrection was kind of boring. I saw it on VHS. And I remember thinking, I have got to see a Star Trek movie on the big screen. And I had always wanted an Enterprise toy. Like a replica, electronic. Playmates Toys made electronic Star Trek replicas back in the day. And I wanted an Enterprise toy. I had one of the Enterprise D from Next Generation when I was, I want to say 4 or 5. My dad bought it for me before I was even really into the show. And my brother, the day I got it, my little 2-year-old brother lost the engine nacelles. And so it was a flightless Enterprise for the rest of the time. It was the first day I had it, and he lost the engines, and I was so upset. But I said, I need to have a ship that I can treat right. I wanted to show my responsibility because I'm getting older. And I was 9 years old. Insurrection had just come out. My dad took me out to Kmart and he said, listen, you want an action figure? Because he's already got me the Space Talk. There were these action figures that talks. They had like 3 little phrases each that they said. And I had Picard and Riker. And I was like, well, I kind of want an Enterprise. And I mean, the Space Talk series, they were in the Next Generation uniforms, but I wanted the Enterprise E because it was what was in vogue at the time. And it was electronic. They had the Insurrection, Star Trek Enterprise, and I got that. And I was like, oh, boy, this is awesome. I love putting my little stickers on there and making sure that everything fit properly. And I didn't lose the engines. I kept that ship for 12 years before it eventually fell apart. And Star Trek kind of disappeared after a while for me. I didn't like Deep Space Nine, didn't like Voyager. They just seemed kind of boring. I know that's heresy for some fans, but I just never got into it until a lot later, like 10 or 20 years later each. This is where the story gets into Trekkie-ism territory, where I got really interested in the lore and the backstory, because up until now, I just was kind of a casual fan. Enterprise aired in 2001, and Nemesis was coming out hot on the heels of Enterprise. And I was like, okay, Nemesis, that's where I'm going to make my big screen debut. You remember me earlier saying I wanted to see it on the big screen. So I saw Nemesis on the big screen, and I was so devastated because I had read snippets of a leaked version of the script the night before, and I was like, oh, Riker and Troy are finally getting married, and I was so excited. I mean, again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, but I mean, it's been 20 some odd years now. I hopefully I don't offend anybody with that, but I was like, Riker and Troy are getting married. That's so cool. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, you cannot kill off Data. And that's what they did. And I was so mad. I was so mad. I had never walked out of a movie theater angry before. Enterprise wasn't much better. I liked the first season or two, but then they got to the Xindi War, and I was like, this is stupid. Just a bunch of warmongering. But I always felt that Star Trek was supposed to be progressive, and I felt like it was too much of a war scenario in Enterprise. So I was kind of mad about that. And I said to myself, well, okay, we don't have Nemesis. We don't have Enterprise. I did stay tuned for the finale of Enterprise because I heard Riker and Troy were going to be in it, and I loved These Are the Voyages, believe it or not, because it was back to exploring space. Still a little upset that they killed off Trip, but I was like, well, the Next Generation character's coming back. That's all I really care about at this point. And then there was radio silence for what felt like forever. And I remember there was a Star Trek 2006 40th anniversary tribute to all the series and movies. And I remember I stopped watching that video on YouTube because YouTube was brand new in those days. And I stopped watching it and I was crying. I was like, they're never going to bring Star Trek back. I'm done. There's nothing I can do. I mean, that's kind of pitiful to think about it, but I mean, I'm just like, it's just a TV show, as William Shatner once put. But it meant something more than just that to me. It was an inspiration. It was, so I remember Enterprise went off the air, and I thought to myself, let's dig back a little bit. Let's go back to where it all began. And I said, I can't go back to the 60s, but then there is the motion picture, which I've only seen like a couple of times. And so let's check that out. The music was always really nice. And so I started listening to the soundtrack first. I found a website called like Trek Connection or something. It doesn't exist anymore because of copyright reasons for sure. But I listened to music. I fell in love with it. I watched the movie, fell in love with it. And ever since, I have loved Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It's been my favorite movie of all time, favorite Star Trek, anything of all time. We'll get to that in another video, my entire gushing over just the motion picture. But you can see I'm wearing the uniform. There's a reason why. 2008, I went to go see Cloverfield with my mom because I heard there was going to be a Star Trek trailer. And I was like, oh my God, they're bringing it back? I was in shock. I was literally blown away. And I remember I saw a video. You'll notice there's a lot of tears in this, in memories that I have. But there was a video where it showed... There's a trailer. It's trailer 3 for the 2009 Star Trek movie. And Bones says, we've got no captain and no first officer to replace him. And the new Kirk says, yeah, we do. And he sits in the chair, and I was bawling. I was like, that's the first time he ever sat in the captain's chair. Oh my God. And I was geeking out. So you'll notice that I'm kind of a goofy sort of fellow and kind of weird, but hey, who isn't? So I was just so excited they were bringing Star Trek back. And it's just been like that ever since. Every time they announce something big, I get so excited. Into Darkness, I was nervous, but I was excited. And they didn't blow up the Enterprise. I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to crash into San Francisco Bay. They didn't. Beyond made me mad because I saw it in a 3-picture showing with 2009, then Into Darkness, then to Beyond. And Beyond, I was like, you can't blow up the ship. How are you going to boldly go if you don't have a ship? Then Discovery gets announced. I watched the first 2 seasons, loved it. Season 3 kind of fell apart for me. Because, spoiler alert, because Discovery's brand new, so this is spoiler territory. If you haven't seen Discovery, there are some changes of setting in Season 3, starting in Season 3 and going to Season 4. Picard was kind of a tough pill to swallow, but I loved it. I loved seeing a lot of the old characters again. There's going to be some more coming up, I think, from one of the announcement trailers. I'm really excited about that. Lower Decks, I adored. It was so freaking funny and so hilarious. But it also showed in tremendous care and took very great lengths to make it a very fun but poignant show. And I loved the ending of Season 1, the Season 1 finale. There's two cameos in that I was like, yes, that's epic. That's where These Are the Voyages should have been with Enterprise. Prodigy, I've seen so far, is really good. I'm excited for Strange New Worlds, and I'm really excited to see how everything pans out. I mean, this is a great time to be a Trekkie, but I wanted to share with everyone why I'm a Trekkie, where it all started, and why it's important to me, and how I stand on everything. And there's going to be further videos, but this is my Star Trek experience, and I'm gonna probably comment more about that later, but. Anyway, this is going to be the end of our transmission today. Hopefully we'll be able to get another incoming transmission in soon. Again, I'm Admiral Archer. Live long and prosper.